Good morning. Thank you for joining us. This is John Williams with TDL Gentek. Today we are going to go through a little bit of a different way of doing a webinar. We're doing a fireside conversation, a fireside chat with the folks from Corero. I'll introduce them as we go through. Just want to do a little bit of housekeeping stuff. This is a recorded webinar. So those of you who registered and did not join us live, you will have the opportunity. We'll send you the link directly. So thank you for joining afterwards as well. If you find this of interest and you wish to pass it on to the colleagues, you will also get a link for those who join so you can pass it along. We typically get almost 5 times as many views afterwards. That's the way of the world today. People want to watch things on their own time. So we appreciate the people who then stream it later on or watch it later on. So basically, there's still the ability for you to put in your questions into the Q&A. You can also use the chat. We'll be reviewing those from time to time throughout the presentation, and certainly make sure we cover it at the end. Anything that we can't answer today, we'll certainly have the folks from Corero or Gentek follow up and make sure that those are answered and offered to the whole team. So let's get right into it. Just a quick introduction. Gentek, TDL Gentek, still working on that. As we 2 very large Canadian distributors merged over the last year and a half. We are 100% Canadian distributor focusing exclusively on the Canadian marketplace. We do have a lot of US and international customers, but they tend to be working with Canadian customers, and so we take care of them on a drop ship mode for that. We have nationwide facilities. We have warehouses in Alberta, Ontario, soon to be in Quebec. We have sales offices also today in Montreal and Vancouver, Paris, Ontario, and very near to where Cameron is, where we'll introduce Cameron later on, up in the just a little bit west of the Hamilton Mountains. So we have sales offices throughout Canada. We support the Canadian marketplace. The 2 companies, TDL and Gentek, which are now one. Gentek started in the broadband industry. We've been selling modems all the way back to before 56K modems, all the way now to 3.5 and higher broadband modems. Security is part of the TDL and Gentek business portfolio. Unified communications. TDL Gentek as a group has been selling SIP phones from the early days of SIP phones, and then now as a primary source of our support to the service providers in the Canadian marketplace. We've added networking and Pro AV as our vendors move into those spaces and have built a really nice business to that. And our traditional TDL side of the business, they started in retail and they still today manage several vendors in the consumer goods environment. So we're actually very soon going to be opening up a friends and family website for some of the products we sell there, including all the Garmin products. So if you're looking for Christmas gifts, watches, fish finders, we'll have them for our customers and partners very soon. We do very well on our customers' customer satisfaction numbers. And really, we've been born and bred with the service providers of all types in the Canadian marketplace, whether you're selling internet, UC hosted, you're doing IPTV, you're doing security, and now we're really well focused in the wireless internet service provider business as well. So that's really where we've been born and bred. Part of that drives the value add services. We've been adding services all the way through our history to manage and help manage our service providers become more effective servicing their customers. Blind drop shipping, in our environment, every drop ship is a blind drop ship. We know that we're delivering to our customers. They don't need to know who we are. They don't need to know that the product didn't come from your warehouse. We help provision that product. We can either help you with the zero touch or the remote provisioning services, or we can actually open the box and provision individual phones as necessary. We take care of the RMAs and the warranties. We have a very quick way of doing that. All the MAC addresses are databased so that you can access them anytime. We also add that to your invoicing. That helps with your provisioning and your device management, but it also speeds up the RMA process because we just do it by MAC address. Labeling endpoint boxes. You got a large project where you're shipping phones all across to multiple branches of a customer. Instead of them having to look at a MAC address list, you can actually have the name of the person the phone is destined to go to. And of course, we provide you with a list of the names and the MAC addresses so that you can provision them automatically so they can arrive. The customer puts the phone together and it's working right away. We do some refurbishing as well for the modems and some phones. Certainly some networking gear. So that's something that's an ad hoc service that we do for some of our customers. That's something you can talk to me or any of my sales team members about. And then we also do training. And part of training is not only doing certification training like we did Ubiquity this week in our Trenton office, but we also do these kind of webinars where we're bringing new products to you, products that you may not have thought about using before, and products that we think have a real good play in our marketplace. So that's the little splurge about us. I want to introduce the Corero team. I'm part of that team, TDL Gentek. I'm working on this piece to it. So, but I wanted to introduce Cam Kirk, our Canadian lead. He's our support manager. Hi, Cam. How are you doing?
Hi, John.
There we go. And then the CTO, Corero, Ashley Stephenson, Ash as we call him. He's going to be my partner in crime here as we go through this fireside chat. So I'm going to throw it to him and ask him to explain how Corero came to be. What do you do in a couple of sentences, and then we can move on to some of the more important stuff about the products.
Great, thanks, John. Glad to be here, and hi to everyone who's listening into the webinar. So Corero, in contrast to your introduction of TDL Gentek, ours is much narrower. We are DDoS specialists. All we do is DDoS, but we've been doing it for 10 years. We're a public company listed on the London Exchange. We're profitable. And one of our key customer targets is mid-tier, tier 2, tier 3 service providers. So I think that's why it might resonate with some of your customers in our discussions today. Canada, we're probably in a couple of the top 20 ISPs in Canada already, but our expanded focus would be like the top 100 or 200 service providers in the Canadian market. Myself, I've been with Corero for those 10 years, the first 7 as the CEO. As we've grown and become bigger, I've moved over to the CTO role. I'm actually a scientist by training, but I've had the pleasure of, selling in 50 countries around the world. We have hundreds of customers. I've talked to thousands of service provider prospects and helped them understand what DDoS is in terms of a threat to them and their customers, but also what DDoS is in terms of a security solution and also a revenue generating solution for them too. So looking forward to today's discussion with you, John.
Excellent. That's great. So as an introduction, basically what we wanted to do is make sure that people understood not only the nature and the anatomy of a DDoS attack, but how it affects the customers. So, I mean, really at the end of the day, we've heard about this. I think the first, I looked at the slideware from your first half results, and that we can go back to the late 90s, where MasterCard was taken down by a DDoS attack. So this is not something new. It's been around for a long time. But what is happening today, and what is a DDoS attack, and how is it affecting, just basically, how is it working today?
Yeah, well, the good news is 10 years on from when we started focusing on DDoS at Corero, a lot more people have heard about DDoS and have a basic understanding of what it is. 10 years ago, they didn't even know what, they hadn't even heard of DDoS, as they used to call it. So a distributed denial of service attack, we're showing just one example of how they can be accomplished here. There are many different vectors and methods, but some bad guy somewhere decides to attack a victim. And obviously the victim could be a business, an individual, a gaming competitor, no real a country, a government, no real discrimination there, but they use some kind of botnets or available resources on the internet to launch traffic at that victim by using their IP address, the IP address by which they present themselves to the internet. So it's an internet-only phenomenon, but it's based around the fact that anybody can send traffic to your IP address on the internet. So through a variety of mechanisms, they trigger the release or the generation or the amplification of traffic throughout the internet to the victim server. And you can see from this simple diagram, knowing where the attack traffic's coming from doesn't tell you who's attacking you. The person attacking you is actually that layer up at the top level, behind the curtain, directing those bots or vulnerable servers to send traffic to your server. They can overwhelm, in this case, we're showing them overwhelming the victim server, but they could overwhelm the connectivity to the victim, the uplink connections to your upstream service provider, or the downlink connections to you and your business or your data center. So a simple concept that, as you pointed out, has been around for decades, but is being used more and more seriously and more effectively by bad guys as we move through the 2020s. John.
So, obviously we all know about the large attacks on big commercial. It could be politically motivated. It could be revenge. It could be, like you mentioned, the gaming thing is something that I was, very interesting, and where you want to win a game, and so you take out your competitors' IP addresses.
Yep.
But really, when it comes to small and medium businesses in Canada, and that's the bulk of our customers in our marketplace here. A lot of them would be, on top of everything else they have to worry about finding a good internet provider, finding a good UC provider, finding, how are they going to do their cash machines and all the other things. I mean, I can see where DDoS attacks is probably pretty low on their priority list, but how would a small and medium business, in globally, how would this affect them? And I guess the other thing is they probably don't think they'd ever be targeted. So how would that affect our customers?
Yeah, so on this slide, we show some stats of what's happening out there. This is from our latest threat intel report. And if I just talk through these percentages, it'll help, I think, answer your question. So first thing to notice is more 3/4 of attacks last less than 10 minutes, right? They're like, come in, they do their damage and they leave. So often, if you don't have any DDoS detection or protection in your network, you're not even sure what's happened. It's like, hey, something's wrong. Customers are complaining, my service is not available, my website's going slow. You're scrambling to figure out what's wrong, and before you start looking, it's gone, right? So that's why they have to be concerned about DDoS. It can be a cause of quality issues, perceived SLA not being up to the required levels, customer complaints, help desk tickets, etc. The next one is that 98% of the attacks are less than 10 gigabits. I mean, 98%. What that means is for most customers who get attacked, or most small businesses or service providers, they won't see a full pipe necessarily. The attacks will come down, riding along with the good traffic, hiding, if you will, in the good traffic. But when they funnel down to the final victim, they can cause a problem again. So you get the question of service levels and availability. The third statistic here is probably the worrying one in 2023. We've seen a 300% increase in carpet bomb attacks. Now, this word carpet bomb, it's a bit of an evocative name given to this vector. The problem here is that if just one of the IP addresses attracts an attack on a network, then often you can take action to mitigate the DDoS attack. But what the attackers have realized is if they want to get to a victim on one of your customers or your provider's networks, they've realized that they don't just send the attack to that victim, they'll send it to all of the intermediate service providers' IP addresses and try and overload the whole system as opposed to just the victim. So they're attacking basically the intermediary, which in this case is often the service provider, the medium-sized service provider. So that's become a very challenging one for providers. The provider wasn't the original target, it was one of their customers, but with this kind of vector, the provider gets taken down. And then the last statistic just characterizes the observation that these are not one and done kind of situations. Often when somebody decides to target an IP address in your space or the space you service for your customers, they'll be back at you within a week with another attack. So this is where it's come in the last 10 or 20 years, John. It's an everyday occurrence. You probably don't know about it explicitly as a DDoS attack, but you are seeing some service level issues, customer complaints that probably come down to no problem found if you're not running some kind of DDoS protection or offering a DDoS service to your downstream tenants.
So in the case of some of our customers, a lot of our customers here are doing, voice traffic, they're doing UC traffic. And so obviously a 10-minute drop in service would be a significant impact on, a call center or anybody who uses the telephone, because you'd effectively drop all those calls during that point. And then again, 5 or 6 minutes later, 10 minutes later, it's all working again. And so there may not even be a complaint because they're going to worry about whether it was the internet or it was some other thing or internal. And really, I mean, you would never know it's a DDoS attack unless you had something to prove that. So how do you how do you accomplish that? I mean, how are we going to go about not only finding it out, but then protecting?
Well, the kind of products that we offer not only have the technology to detect a DDoS attack, but they're operationally oriented towards medium and small service providers who don't have, large security staffs. So it's also recording and documenting everything it observes. So you can come back to our system, or even one of your customers can come back to our system a couple of days later and review what was observed for a certain time period or a certain day of the week. And so if you do subsequently find that there was a complaint, you can retroactively go and determine whether there was a DDoS attack at that time and who the victim was, and also decide if you need to enable protection for that customer, or perhaps that customer, your tenant, needs to purchase your DDoS protection service from you in order to be insulated from that kind of problem.
So we'll get into the channel piece in a few minutes. Don't want to, because we'll take a look at that option. But in terms of how you protect a single, like a service provider or a single customer, what differentiates you from other DDoS systems out there?
Well, the original DDoS vendors focused on the very largest service providers. So they would be, talking to Rogers or Bell Canada in your territory. Corero grew up serving the much bigger middle tier and smaller tier providers. So just like I mentioned, security teams and networking teams, our systems have got a high level of automation, which means they're not labor intensive. They generate reports on demand and also automatically. You can get it to send you an email when there's something to go look at. They have very high levels of accuracy built into them, so they don't do false positives and require security expert follow-up. So a lot of things that we learned working with those kind of providers, they told us what the system would have to do, and we built and evolved our system to suit their needs. So I think it's purpose-built for this tier 2, tier 3, middle tier kind of provider space. And we have local and rural providers using our technology too. You don't have to be an expert because we're the experts, I think is part of the message, John.
Excellent. And that really comes back to kind of our history as well, as we've provided a lot of value add services. We found products that are focused on that, tier 2, tier 3, from the, somebody starting a service provider business in their basement to somebody who's gone to, a multi-facility hosted environment. And so, that's similarities between the two companies in terms of how we've been built up is very interesting to me. Focused on that marketplace. We understand it, both in, because really a DDoS attack anywhere in the world has the same effect on customers, correct? I mean,
that's right. And that's right. Another insight too in our kind of approach to the market is we understand that our customers, often some kind of provider, they're running a business too. And so we need to understand what's in it for them to offer this to their customers as a value-added service so that they can, make money by provisioning DDoS protection. So we have lots of help in the form of programs through Gentek to help them roll out a service like this. Examples, we can point to their peers who are already doing this and making money. We have the related support services necessary. So it's turning out to be a very attractive kind of add-on capability for providers in addition to their mainstream business. We're not suggesting they set up just as DDoS protection providers. That's a specialized opportunity. But if you're running a business that delivers internet service or related internet services, then there's an opportunity at least to investigate offering a value-added security service in the form of DDoS protection for your clients.
So, and that brings us to the channel piece, and that is really that it's not just protecting the service provider's network. You're allowing the service providers who select your product then to sell it to their downstream customers. That's correct, right?
That's right. In fact, it's stronger than allowing. We're enabling them to. So part of the product is a beautiful portal that they can brand with their own brand, and their customers can log into their branded portal and see what protection they're getting from them as the intermediate provider. You know what I mean? Right. So it's set up for exactly that kind of operation. So each of their customers who buy this service or they choose to provide the service to feels like, you know, they've got a service delivery portal they can go to at any time. They can schedule email reports or alerts if they want. It's very kind of, we're service enabling our customers to deliver DDoS protection to their customers.
So let's take a little closer look at the various levels of services and really that journey of how do you protect your customers all the way from detection to mitigation. And really, it comes down.
Yeah, that's right. So you're right. A lot of people find themselves, they have no protection. Okay, they don't even know DDoS is a problem. I think we were talking to that earlier. But there isn't one size fits all here. You know, if you're a tier one provider, you know, a national provider or even an international provider, you've already got some DDoS mechanisms in your network. But that's not always true for middle tier or smaller tier or even new providers. So when they start their journey, they probably first need to think about detection. Do I have DDoS issues on my network? Are any of my service problems or customer issues related to DDoS? So that might be one level they come in at. Then if they do find that, they might need some kind of mitigation. Hey, one of my customers is being attacked. I've got to protect myself and the rest of my customers before I go deal with the individual who's under attack. So preservation is a good story for the mitigation aspect of the product. Beyond that, if they really want to service customers and offer them the ability to stay up during these DDoS attacks, then they need to think about protection, covering all aspects and maintaining service levels for the victim. And then at the end of all of that is this idea of, you know, selling this as a service, a value-added service, downstream, increasing their retention and stickiness. Now, this journey also has a scaled price associated with it. Not everybody can afford, you know, the Ferrari or Rolls Royce of DDoS protection. We understand they're running a business. They have to trade off what their customers can afford versus what they themselves can invest in. So again, our understanding of the mid-tier and smaller tier providers caused us to create a product offering that has a scalable kind of entry point in terms of investment, complexity, and pricing. But you can go all the way to the top. We do have tier one customers who buy pretty much everything we offer, you know, and use it to deliver their services that generate millions of dollars a year in DDoS protection revenues.
So in an environment where a service provider offering either voice or Wi-Fi or other solutions, but they're actually going over the top on somebody else's internet, right? So that's a very typical case study in the Canadian marketplace where you buy your internet from, you know, somebody who's pulled fiber in the area, and then you buy UC services from another service provider. In that case, would the UC service provider still have some sort of into that customer for DDoS to protect their customer?
Well, every case is, you know, individually reviewed. So we do have a kind of consultative sell opportunity with the Corero offering. First thing the provider would have to understand is where are they hosting their services and what protection do they have for the hub of those services. So that's where we would start, and we have, you know, options for that. If the internet service itself is delivered by a third party, then the customer is dependent on that third party for the quality, if you will, of their internet connection. So, and to put like a more specific example, we have had cases where somebody's bought a really poor internet service, and then they somehow think that they can buy something else to make it into a good internet service. So you can't, there's no magic here. I'll be very honest. So it is dependent to some degree on who the actual provider is. But we do understand there aren't options in some cases, whether it be rural wireless ISPs or other kind of local providers. So our goal is to work with, your customers to help them understand what options are available to them in this journey based on how they deliver their service. And hopefully, we'll become a trusted partner as well in guiding them where they should make their investments to improve their service levels or their revenues, John.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess really the next one we wanted to cover is some of the misconceptions, and we've covered a few of them. Basically on the fact that a lot of people think that their primary provider or their ISP is the one providing the DDoS protection, but in a lot of cases, as you mentioned, there's no way of tracking that. Correct?
Yes, unless you're monitoring DDoS on your own site, it's very hard to know what's happening upstream and whether somebody's taking care of it or not on your behalf. And when we install with some of our customers, they're both shocked and amazed at what's been going on their network. They didn't realize that they were effectively running a car that wasn't tuned up or geared up for performance. So it's very helpful when you actually install a product like this, a security product, and start to see what's really happening. And so that I think, as you say, is one of the misconceptions, that somebody else is taking care of it. I wouldn't assume that unless it's trust. It's the sort of trust but verify. You need to have a look yourself. The other thing that happens a lot is people think, "Oh, I'll never be a target," or "I'm not a target." Well, first of all, how do you know if you're not a target if you're not, detecting DDoS? But what we've seen over the years is it only takes one of your customers at some time to use one of your IP addresses to access some service somewhere in the world that somebody picks as a target or doesn't like, and then from that time on, that IP address could be on a list to be DDoSed. So it's very much an inherited kind of attack surface, as opposed to one that you actually have to knowingly put yourself on the victim list. Other things that come up are a lot along the same lines. We haven't been attacked. Again, how do you know if you don't have DDoS? And also, because you haven't been attacked, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be proactive in understanding and protecting your network for the future. Probably the last one I'll mention is people sometimes think that adding bandwidth, will protect them.
But that doesn't work anymore? Come on, that's been, everybody's been saying that for decades. Cisco, I think, built a business on it.
What it basically does is let in more of the attack in the case of DDoS. So while it might, adding bandwidth might let you add more subscribers, it also lets in more of the DDoS. It's not something you can skirt around, really. If you have a DDoS problem, you need DDoS detection and mitigation and protection. That's our business.
That's right.
I'm not shy about it. That's why customers use us all around the world, to protect their internet properties or services.
So one thing we've been finding, especially in the last 2-3 years, I guess since the start of the pandemic, is that a lot of what we used to call tier 2 or independent service providers are now reaching into customer bases that are a lot different than they were 3-4 years ago. And that's why I kept this slide. I know it was one of the slides where we weren't sure if we needed this one in terms of who uses it, the end users. This has always been a problem for a lot of our service providers, because generally they were working at the small, medium business, mom and pop shops, pizza shops, mechanics, dentist offices. But recently, some of the customers have been really reaching into some very large environments, whether they be hospitals, large multi-site memory care homes, and basically school systems have always been, kind of the smaller the school system, more likely they're going to go with the local independent. So, where we're selling, the end users, I see when we drop ship, the only, I get a report at the end of the day where we've been shipping stuff. And it's not just small businesses anymore. We're seeing a lot more large businesses. And so, the DDoS has more of an effect on that, on those type of customers. There tend to be more of a client or a target. So, I mean, it's not just thinking about the SMB, it's about the mid-sized enterprise. And in some cases, we're seeing our tier 2s and tier 1s supporting video applications or UC applications to some pretty large enterprise customers in the Canadian marketplace. Cam, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that in terms of, where you're seeing the Canadian customers move to in terms of their customer size, but have you seen the same sort of thing?
Absolutely, John. Yeah. So to your point, right, you've seen in the news, DDoS attacks are not just, one specific vertical anymore. They're affecting, airports, smaller businesses. So our customer base really spans across all these verticals.
Right. And so, I mean, this is where, bringing this product line to TDL Gentek is kind of exposing it to the service providers that have been doing business in these marketplaces for quite a while. And so we're happy, Cam, you're going to be a big part of making sure that, we pass on and work together with the customers to define the offering that they can do, not only for themselves, but their customers. What do you see is like the easiest way to start that conversation, not only with the service provider, but with the service provider with their customers?
Well, I mean, like we've been talking, most customers they don't realize they've been attacked, so they don't have visibility. So the question is, have you had experienced any downtime, any customer sat issues? That just open the conversation. Have you had any issues with DDoS or suspecting DDoS? They may not know. That generally opens up the conversation. Or, is this something that you can monetize and add new service revenue to your customers in terms of from a service provider perspective?
Yeah, and many of the customers that are on, watching this or heard this, they've heard me in the past with other products about really trying to identify where the problem exists. We've gone through SBC systems, SD-WAN systems, and as somebody that's a recovering PBX salesman, like a lot of people in the industry, doing my 11 years of penance at Avaya and IP Office and everything else, it's always been a problem of identifying where the problem exists. So I've been looking for products in the marketplace from, again, SBCs and SD-WANs that would at least identify whether it was internal network or external network. But this even goes a little bit farther. Now we can actually, because a lot of times the internet service providers say we haven't had a service outage. The network internally now, using Ubiquity and other device managers from Grandstream and others, they can say there's been no problem on the network. So all of a sudden now, who's to blame for a 10-minute outage? And so this is another tool in the toolbox as a service provider to identify where the problem's coming.
Yeah,
so I guess. Yeah,
go ahead. I was going to add, a customer, an ISP or a service provider or SaaS provider for that matter, needs to ask the question, what would it mean in terms of, if I lost 1 or 2 customers due to an outage, right? That can be catastrophic for some service providers. So
definitely. And again, as we talked about the whole carpet bomb thing is that it could be all your customers for 10 minutes. And, you'll hear a lot more people talk about that because they're probably neighbors, right? So it's like, bad news travels faster than good news, right? So it's, if we can identify what the problem is and then, take action, then definitely that can help. So I guess the last thing is, this is a little bit of, Cam, a little bit of the customers that you find in North America. Do you have any you want to highlight here in terms of what they're accomplishing for their customers?
Yeah, these are, it's a good sample of our customers. More local to the Canada region would be Niagara Regional Broadband Network, and they've done we've actually done a white paper, a customer testimonial. They've done that, so we have that. We can make that available to anyone on this call. It's on our website. The use case for them is they didn't know what they didn't know. And so when they brought in Corero, the beauty of Corero is for them, it's literally set and forget, automated protection. They don't have time, they don't have the staff to go and look and see where issues are in the network. So Corero has truly been a set and forget product for them, solution. Longtime customer, extremely happy. And I think it's very relevant to other customers in the Canadian market.
So they were surprised after running the detection for a couple of weeks at the amount of DDoS attacks on their own network?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. Okay. So really at this point, Ash, do you have anything you wanted to add as a final comment?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your base, and we're ready to support you. Both Cam, obviously, locally, yourself, and then myself and our team stand behind, our product and our partners. So give us a call, give you guys a call, and we'll engage and see what we can offer. Looking forward to it.
Certainly. Thank you, Ash. I really appreciate your time. Cam, thank you for joining. I know you've had some conversations with some of the TDL Gentek folks as well. Certainly, there's the contacts here. There's myself. You can always also reach out to your local, your Gentek or TDL Gentek rep. Sales@gentek.com is also a great spot if you're looking for support right away. Of course, we'll put you in touch with the appropriate. We can have the conversation and we can move on to next steps in terms of meeting with Cam, having a discussion about your needs, and then move forward with it and hopefully provide the protection that not only you need as a service provider, but the opportunity to then generate revenue offering that service downstream to your customers. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for their time, for joining us today. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Ash. It's been a great conversation. Appreciate your time. And again, this is a recorded session, so we will be sending out the link to everybody who registered. So not only those who are on as well, so they can review it. And feel free to forward it to your colleagues as well. You'll find it on our website as well. So again, I think that's it for today. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and a great Thanksgiving weekend for the Canadian folks. Ash, I guess you got another month and a bit to wait for your Thanksgiving. So
that's right. Yeah.
But thank you for joining us from Long Island.
I've enjoyed a few Canadian Thanksgivings, so
fantastic.
I'll be thinking of you.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Ash. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll shut this down. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thank you.